Good afternoon, everybody. Sawadee-krap. I am Dr. Ushiro from Japan. In the first place, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude for the invitation to this very valuable opportunities and allow me to make a presentation on our compensation system, which has been working very well in Japan. And on behalf of JQ, Japan Council for Quality Healthcare, I'd like to thank Dr. Spachai and my other Thai colleagues for this occasion. So let's start with my talk. And this morning, I made a presentation on nationwide adverse event reporting system in Japan. And one of them corresponds to, cerebral palsy investigation, prevention, compensation system. This is a sort of a reporting system incentivized by non-fault-based compensation, monetary compensation. I'd like to, this is just to give you an idea of the background of this compensation system. About 10 years ago, what we have suffered in Japan is the shortage of, I'm very, very sorry. Okay, shortage of what happened? Maybe I should use it. Shortage of obstetrician and the long working hours, and many obstetricians burned out, and the rising lawsuit cases, for instance, cerebral palsy cases, brain damage cases, and the low birth rate as well. So the study committee was launched in a leading political party, and they published a report. The title is shown here. In the report, they say, the political party said that it is often difficult to determine malpractice in cases of healthcare accident during delivery, and are often contended in court. The frequent disputes is one of the reasons for the shortage of obstetricians. So it also says that in order to secure safe and trustworthy perinatal care, which benefit not only obstetricians, but also guardians, A, B, and C should be put into effect immediately. The number one, this corresponds to A, compensate the patients who developed a disability possibly due to obstetric adverse events, and bring conflict to settlement as early as possible, and establish a mechanism that improves quality of obstetric care by investigating causes of cerebral palsy. So what happens when a baby develops cerebral palsy is shown here. Usually we see normal history of pregnancy. However, it happens that the child develops cerebral palsy. If the case is negligent, compensation according to liability payment rule in civil court is paid to families and babies. But if there is no negligence in the case, there is no compensation. But those cases often goes to lawsuit, or often goes to court. So that's the problem happening in Japan 10 years ago. And actually, it happens everywhere in the world. I will show you the sample of the US. This is a newspaper article in the US. This child develops cerebral palsy, and the guardians of her guardians sued the hospital, St. Charles Hospital, to court, and then they won the money as much as $130 million in the end. This is an enormous amount of money. It's very incredible. So I wrote an email to the writer of this article in the US, and I said that it never happens in Japan in terms of the amount of money. Furthermore, now we have obstetric compensation system in Japan, so it never happens in that meaning as well. I got a reply from the writer, and he is really interested in our compensation system. So this is the second example in the US. Obstetricians in Florida state got out of the state because of the rising insurance premiums due to the rising lawsuit cases of obstetric and gynecology. So the state, Florida state, built up a compensation system, but the family do not use this system very often, and then they often goes to court. So similar situation was in Japan 10 years ago. The Japanese obstetricians, for instance, Professor Emeritus Takashi Okai, who wrote this book entitled No Fault, Takashi Okai. She is an obstetrician in trouble. Professor Emeritus Takashi Okai of Showa University, author of this book, depicted how risky it is to be engaged in delivery in Japan from medical and legal point of view. The story of the book gave a scenario of TV drama, which was effective to raise public awareness in Japan. So in 2009, according to the report published by leading political party, we, JQ, as an operator, established and launched the compensation system, which has two major pillars. The first pillar is no-fault-based compensation system. We do not argue if it's negligent or not during the process of approval. And the second pillar is the investigation and prevention. And we investigation each cases, individual cases, and we craft investigational report 20 to 30 pages long, and we deliver it both to childbirth facilities and guardians as well. So let me go over what no fault means in our system. No fault compensation means compensation irrespective of negligence. So we do not place any consideration on whether this case is malpractice or not malpractice during our review process for approval. So actually, to be honest, there is no legal background, no law for this compensation system. But the Japanese obstetrician united very firmly. So the group of obstetricians, almost all of them, registered this compensation system. So 99.9% of childbirth facilities in Japan registered in this system. What you see here is the entire working flow of approval of investigation and prevention. In the first place, childbirth facility files petition for compensation. And then we approve the case in approval committee by examining eligibility. And we start payment, monetary compensation. And then we start investigation, and we craft investigational report. And investigational report aggregates. Now we have already published more than 1,000 investigational reports, so many. And so we put those investigational reports on collective analysis, and we withdraw lessons from those aggregated cases. And we conduct preventive activity by distributing our knowledge for improving quality and safety in obstetric care. So in the series of coming slides, coming 7 slides maybe, I'm going to talk about the financing of our compensation system, how we get money for compensation. Okay, the first slide is very, very simple and easy to understand. If child is born, a pregnant woman, in other words, guardian, pay delivery fee to childbirth facility. But in Japanese public healthcare system, what happens is the next slide. The public insurance payer give lump sum birth allowance to guardians, shown here. This is the Japanese public healthcare system. So the question number 1 is, how can our system be coupled with the pre-existing payment system I have shown you to assure financial resource for monetary compensation? So what we came up with is that we introduce private insurance system into this payment system, and then in which childbirth facility pays insurance premiums to private indemnity insurance companies through JQ as a representative contractor in this system. And if child develops cerebral palsy and if he or she is approved, the compensation money comes from indemnity insurance company to the pregnant woman, guardians. Okay, that's what we thought. But there is a problem about this scheme. So the question number 2 is, how the financial burden of childbirth facility to pay insurance premium is mitigated. So let's get back one more one. Childbirth facility do not want to pay a lot of money. So the question number 2, in question number 2, we considered how to reduce the burden, financial burden of childbirth facilities. Childbirth facility pays insurance premiums. So the childbirth facility, it raises childbirth fee by the amount of insurance premium to reduce the burden. However, it means that the burden is imposed onto guardian. So therefore, the government made an arrangement in which it raised the childbirth allowance by the amount of insurance premium to reduce the burden of guardian. So the final scheme, it will be shown in the next slide. Childbirth facility raised the money, pays insurance premium through JQ to indemnity insurance firms. So the childbirth facility raised the delivery fee, but it means that the financial burden is imposed onto the guardians. So the Japanese government raised lump sum birth allowance by the amount of insurance premiums to reduce the financial burden of guardians. So this is the final scheme. So the last question is, who owes the financial burden substantially in the final scheme? The answer is that insurance premium is substantially paid by the public insurance payer. In other words, the premium is covered by the public healthcare insurance system in real terms. Okay, that's the financing mechanism of this system. And speaking about monetary compensation, it comprises of 2 types of compensation. The first one is lump sum payment, and another one is annual installments. Lump sum payment means one-time cash payment. And then the amount is shown here, and total amount is shown here. And the annual installments is the money divided into 20 parts, and we pay guardians annually for 20 years. From from the first year to the last year, 20 times. So our payment composes of these two types of payment. So now I switch the subject to the criteria for compensation. In other words, eligibility criteria for compensation. There are three parts: general criteria, individual criteria, and exclusion criteria. So first I'd like to talk about general criteria. General criteria composes of two parts: gestational week and the birth weight, 33rd gestational week or later, and 2,000 grams or over. And the second component is degree of severity. The baby should be certified as first or second class of severity according to the Japanese social welfare system for the disabled. And speaking of individual criteria, patient delivered during 28 weeks or later to 32 gestational week may be approved based on a case-by-case review, a very intensive review, by individual criteria in close reference to the evidence of hypoxic event during delivery. And of course, it also have the degree of severity as a condition. And what is the criteria for case-by-case review? A case consistent with A and B or C, B and or C, is approved on case-by-case review, 20 weeks or later, and umbilical arterial blood pH stands at 7.1 or over, and or specific deceleration patterns on cardiotocography, CTG, which is fetal heart rate monitoring. And come to think of specific deceleration patterns on CTG, these patterns can be approved. Any patterns of A and any of B, C, D is allowed, eligible for the individual criteria. Loss of variability of the baseline and other three deceleration patterns. And what is exclusion criteria? Cerebral palsy case clearly, obviously caused by factors defined by below exclusion criteria is not approved in our system. Because child is obviously caused by congenital causes such as bilateral broad cerebral malformation or chromosomal disorders, genetic disorders, etc., etc. And child is clearly caused by neonatal causes, such as infections, meningitis, after birth, etc., etc. So let's go over the population, eligibility population in schematic image. Let's say this is the population of cerebral palsy in green. Then there is a part of a population which is consistent with A and B, general criteria and severity criteria. But inside of the yellow one, we have small number of populations which meets the exclusion standard, such as congenital cause which takes place after birth. So the eligible population is shown in yellow, and the other population in green are excluded. So let's take a look at the population by gestational week and birth weight. This is study week dotted line, and then 2,000 grams dotted line. So this place in pink corresponds to general criteria, 33 weeks or later, and 2,000 grams or over. And now I finished the explanation of criteria 2009. I would say this is old criteria because in 2015 the criteria was expanded. Now criteria is expanding. So I'm going to talk about the new criteria. But this slide is just to show you the idea of background of expansion. In order to urgently secure obstetric healthcare system in 10 years ago, our system was initially designed with limited data, very small number of data. It's not very scientific. And it was launched as early as possible because this is urgent agenda. This was the urgent agenda in Japanese society as a private insurance system, and there was no legal background. So we were very in a hurry to establish this system. So the system was established with not very scientifically. So the system was launched in 2009 under the precondition that the system is to be scrutinized and revised as needed at the latest in 5 years. So we scrutinized the system and we exchanged our views as an operator with government official or medical professional of scientific societies, and we decided to expand our criteria. So I'm going to talk about the expansion of the criteria. This square in pink is the old criteria. Now, the gestational week was expanded down to 32 weeks. And then the birth weight was expanded down to 1,040 grams. So this pink square is the new corresponds to the new criteria, 32 weeks or later, and 1,400 grams or over. This is the criteria now we are operating with in our system. We also have all the criteria. So I would say now we are working on 2 different criteria. So this is the individual criteria I have already shown you. And in order to expand our criteria, this A, B, C is added with more specific patterns on CTG. So this is maybe this is the old one. And then, okay, this is the new one. The items with underline was also in the old criteria, but items without underline was newly added in the new criteria in 2015. So for instance, late deceleration, I'm sorry, the abrupt and continuous bradycardia is newly included. Sinusoidal pattern is newly included, and so on. So this is the, what is shown here is the approval process of our committee. In the first place, childbirth facility filed petition to JQ, and then in our secretariat, preliminary internal review is conducted. And then we hold a review committee with the presence of obstetricians, pediatricians, lawyers. And then we approve the case and we start payment. But one thing I have to mention too, and I have to tell you, is the withdrawal rule of monetary compensation after approval. What is withdrawal rule? It's shown here. If a case turns out later to be caused by malpractice or childbirth facility, compensation money is withdrawn, taken away. And the case could be paid by physician's liability insurance. Thus, receiving payment from both insurances is not allowed. So the guardians cannot get money from JQ and liability insurance. They cannot get both, so the double payment is prohibited. So what is shown here is the statistics of eligible case by birth year. Now the account of first 3 years, 2009 to 2011, are already closed. So what you see here is the figure of eligible cases. 419, 382, 355. It seems to me that the figure, in other words, cerebral palsy is decreasing in Japan, but I'm not sure. And other 4 years, now we are in the process of approving. So now switch my subject to the next topic, investigation. What is the aim of investigation? Number one, prevention of CP and early settlement of conflict. And what we do to achieve to fulfill the aim is that we investigate from medical point of view of individual case based on data provided from childbirth facility. And we, after that, we feedback of the report both to family and the childbirth facilities. And this is a schematic view of our investigational system. We accept a number of data from childbirth facilities, such as medical records, laboratory data, data on resources of childbirth facility, such as how many obstetricians is working, and how many on daytime shift or nighttime shift, how many midwives are there, and what kind of medical device do you have. And we also receive questions from guardians. Guardians who have child developing cerebral palsy has mixed feeling about the delivery, about the childbirth facilities. So we accept questions from guardians, and we reflect the questions on our investigational report to satisfy those guardians. And then, in the first place, with those data, we clarify clinical course on document basis. So we organize and we clarify the fact, what happened in the case, and we make a document which tells you everything about what happened in the delivery. Then, based on that document, 7 subcommittees start to work to craft investigational report. And they craft the final report or draft report, and draft report will be finally authorized in the committee, and we deliver the investigational report to childbirth facility and family. And we disclose the shortened version, summarized version of our investigational report under, on the condition of anonymity on our homepage. And what is important is that we have a robust secretariat containing midwife, obstetrician, and legal technical staff in JQ. So now we have approved 1,893 cases in our compensation system, and 1,233 cases were given investigational report. So let's take a look at the table of contents of our investigational report. What comes first is the case summary, which means what happened in that case. And it is followed by probable cause of cerebral palsy. Okay. And what comes the third is evaluation of clinical procedures. And what comes last is suggestion and recommendation for improvement, and attach the document. So what is important is the idea of investigation. Importantly, the purpose of investigation is not to seek someone to blame, but to understand why a patient developed profound cerebral palsy. And for evaluation of clinical cause, the case is investigated only in a given conditions at the point when an event happened from the viewpoint of what would be appropriate procedures. It is called the prospective viewpoint. Retrospectively, we have data, so we can say anything. We can blame obstetricians in that case. But this is a retrospective viewpoint. We should apply prospective viewpoint when we evaluate the clinical procedures. But we also apply retrospective viewpoint in order to seek for the measures for preventing the next case, the case in the future. So the report points out problems or challenges that are investigated retrospectively with known facts if it is considered effective for prevention. So these are ideas of investigation. So, this is a very good idea to preserve unity, or in other words, to create standardized investigational report. This is a Japanese language. What it means is that these wordings corresponds to each level of clinical procedure. If clinical procedure is quite good, very good, we use this Japanese word. It means excellent, and this means common, and this one means out of standards. And if the procedure is very poor in quality, we apply this Japanese word. It means lower in quality. So we apply these words to preserve uniformity and also comparability between reports. Those words are exemplified in our manuals. So let's take a look at one sample of our investigation report. This is summarized version, and it's open to the public. So clinical management of pregnancy is commonly seen, and planning of admission and the procedure of labor induction is common. But, however, it was an uncommon procedure that only change of maternal posture followed by observation was taken. Planning of maternal transfer is common. So commonly seen, common, and uncommon procedure, common. We make investigation report in that way. And all the summarized version of our investigation report is posted on our website. And full version reports with identifiers deleted are disclosed through internal ethical process. So we disclose full version of our investigation report on condition of anonymity. And our homepage has other functions as well. There is a manual of compiling investigation report on our website. And our website has keyword searching tool over all the report. So you can input keyword here, and then you can find the reports of your interest quickly. So now the subject of investigation is over. Now I switch the topic to prevention. The aim, prevent the recurrence of future cerebral palsy. And we'd like to improve quality of obstetric care and also enhance public confidence in obstetric care. So what we do is, number one, we investigational reports put on collective and epidemiological analysis, and study results is published in various forms. For instance, annual publication of a report on prevention and ad hoc publication of alerting materials occasionally. And they are widely open to the public on our website. So what you see here is the compiling and the distributing prevention report to exhibit impact on quality of care in Japanese obstetric care. And we investigate individual cases, and we craft investigational report of the case. It includes cause appraisal, preventive measures, and we deliver it both to family and childbirth facilities. And summarized report is posted on the web. And the report with identifiers deleted is available only for research use through internal ethical process. And the report aggregates, now more than 1,000 report aggregates in JQ. And then we put all of them on collective analysis. And we withdraw lessons from those aggregation, and then we compile report for prevention. It contains quantitative epidemiological analysis, thematic analysis, recommendation of preventive measures, etc. And we deliver a prevention report to childbirth facility, scientific society, which is very cooperative with, to us, and the government as well. And we posted the report on our website to be open to the public. This is a report on prevention. It is available on our website, but it is only Japanese, But we are planning to translate it into English in the near future. So I'm sorry, this is very messy. And our prevention report contains two types of analysis. The first one is epidemiological and quantitative analysis. It includes basic data of individual case, such as current physical status, past history of pregnancy, or history of current pregnancy, progress and procedures of delivery and neonatal care, and the institutional resources for childbirth. Those are collectively analyzed. And the second, qualitative and thematic analysis. Specific theme which deserves in-depth research is focused and analyzed. I will show you I will show you some examples later in my talk. This is a table of contents of our annual report. What comes first is epidemiological analysis, and the qualitative and thematic analysis follows. Okay, what you see here is the list of thematic analysis. For instance, we took up fetal heart rate monitoring during delivery, neonatal resuscitation, or administration of uterine contraction agent. In Japanese society, there was a big problem that obstetricians administer too much amount of uterine contraction agent. And most of them are really successful and safe, but others are not. And most of others went to court. And the management of umbilical prolapse, vacuum-assisted delivery, and so on. And this is a pages, structure of pages of thematic analysis. What comes first is preface, and the overview of the theme follows. And then collective analysis of aggregated reports comes in the third. Collective analysis is applied to cause of CP, procedural review, and suggestions and recommendation. And what comes in the last is suggestion and recommendation, which is created from the aggregation of 1,000 cases. This is the, one of the sample of collective analysis, which is causes of CP approved in the system. The most common cause is placental abruption, followed by factors related to umbilical cord, and followed by multiple causes. These causes, we can imagine these causes, and a Japanese obstetrician says this is the same as they imagined before, but what is the difference is the population of the CP for collective analysis. We have approving 300 to 400 cases a year, and we have all the data of those cases. But even in very excellent research hospital in Japan, it cannot collect such a big population of cerebral palsy cases. So thanks to the launch of the system, we were able to research on the cause of the cerebral palsy for the first time in Japan. That's the difference. And what are our challenges in procedural review of investigational report? Some investigational report points out challenges or problem in individual cases. So we put those data on our collective analysis. This is a sample. So case A, the report says, regarding laboratory test, whole day urine protein is recommended, however, it was not conducted in case A. Only improvised urine test was conducted. It is uncommon clinical management of PIH. Maybe this is one of the challenges Japanese obstetrician faces. And then in case B, fetal well-being was not examined by non-stress test ECC against a high-risk case such as PIH, fetal growth retardation, FGR, etc. It is uncommon clinical management. These challenges are pointed out in those investigational reports. This is just a sample. And what are suggested or recommended for quality and safety improvement in the future? For regarding laboratory test, quantitative assay of whole day urine protein is recommended, like it was pointed out in case A. And regarding management of pregnancy, it should be considered that fetal heart rate is monitored in continuous fashion, monitored all the time. For PIH, this is the hypertension disorder after the onset of labor, as pointed out in case B. And in addition to the compilation of report, we also publish leaflet like this. This is an educative statement published by our committee. Specifically, this is the educative statement on neonatal resuscitation standard. Evidence-based procedure of neonatal resuscitation developed by the scientific society is should be swiftly introduced to community of obstetricians and midwives. This is what it said in that leaflet. And I'm going to speak about the scientific aspect of our compensation system. We also published educational materials on CTG. It has English version. It is available for free all the time. This is an educational material on cardiotocograms for cerebral palsy cases. We have never had such a textbook in Japan because the university hospitals or other research hospitals cannot collect such a huge number of CP cases. But owing to this system, it is possible now. So if you take a look at the inside of the report, this case is in this case, a baby is delivered by cesarean section because he or she developed continued deceleration 38 minutes before birth. But 1 hour and 1 minute before birth, we observed prolonged deceleration, which indicates that the baby was in very serious conditions. But 17 minutes before that, we still see very slight, very small late deceleration, which indicates very risky state. It meets our criteria. It meets the criteria developed by Scientific Society of Obstetricians. So this page says that these slight changes should not be overlooked. So now we have published, I told you that we have published more than 1,000 investigational reports. And how did childbirth facility or guardians respond to our investigational report. We conducted a survey on that. So this is the answer from childbirth facility. And most of them are fond of our investigational report. And why they were fond of, they liked our investigational report. The reason is that, the most common reason is that investigation was done by a third body, which is JQ. So we interpret this in a way that the Japanese obstetricians likes or respect to the neutrality in investigation. This is the answer from guardians. Most of them are fond of our report, but some of them are not. Some of them answered not very good. But why they are fond of our report? The answer is that investigation was done by a third body. It's the same as obstetricians answered. And why guardians are not fond of, why guardians do not like our investigational report? The most common reason is that cause of CP was not eventually identified. So we know that the guardians want to know what happened and why our child developed cerebral palsy. But I have to admit that 30% of cases are very unclear in terms of cause of CP. That's the limitation of our science. So I have to I have to repeat that on 30% of cases is unclear to guardians on the phone. So let's look at our system from legal point of view. This is a famous report published by the Supreme Court of Japan. And the report touched on our compensation system here. And it says that it is significant that the Japanese compensation system has brought investigational system by third body and equally distributing system of financial burden for monetary compensation in Japanese society, and sharing the idea that perinatal care inherently holds potential risk. It is not worthy of whether the system expands to cover other medical specialties, surgery or ophthalmology or orthopedics or other areas. The system, having completed significant number of CP cases, supposedly has affected to a certain extent statistics of lawsuit cases of medicine. I'm going to show you statistics of lawsuit cases of medicine later in my talk. So the question is, does the investigational report ignite lawsuit against the childbirth facility or not? So the current, I'm going to show you the current status of damage claims and the lawsuit among approved cases. I told you that we approved 1,800 cases. And among them, 83 cases, 4.4% claimed damage, claimed give me money to medical institutions. And among 83 cases above, 38 cases, 2% filed lawsuit case, and 45 cases, 2.4% preferred settlement out of court. And I told you that we published 1,200 investigational reports. Among them, 29 cases, 2.4% claimed damage after reports were delivered. And only 11 cases, 0.9% filed a lawsuit, and other 1.5% preferred settlement out of court. So in summary, let's say 1,866 eligible cases corresponding to 100%. 4.4% claimed damage, money, and then 2% filed a lawsuit, and 2.5% was settled out of court. Then let's say we published 1,224 reports. Let's say this corresponds to 100%. 2.4% claimed damage, and 0.9% filed lawsuit, and the other 1.5% settled out of court. And what happened to the trend of lawsuit cases? This line corresponds to the lawsuit cases of OBGY, and the bar, each bar corresponds to the lawsuit cases of entire medical specialties. So compared to entire medical specialties, lawsuit cases of OBGY dramatically drops very quickly. So the report published by Japanese Supreme Court touched on our system and said that our system may have some effect on the rapid decline of the lawsuit cases of OBGY. And this is the figure, number of obstetricians in Japan. The blue line on the top corresponds to the total number of obstetricians. And the orange line corresponds to the number of obstetricians in childbirth facilities. And the last one is a senior resident after 3 years of experience. You should ignore the first figure because our system was restored on this year. So looking at this trend, it's not evident, but looking at closely at this trend, our system was launched this year. So it seems to me that the figure is growing a little bit. So we are now trying to enhance publicity of our reporting, of our compensation system and its achievement. So last year, we held the annual meeting of ISQA, International Society for Quality in Healthcare, in Tokyo, and we had a session on obstetric compensation system. And I worked as a modulator of the system, and he is Dr. Okai, and he is Dr. Ikenoue, who is the current president of Miyazaki University. It's very close to my university hospital. And the title of our session is No Fault-Based Compensation Peer Review System for Quality Safety Improvement and Conflict Resolution. So many my Thai colleagues participated in this session, as Dr. Spachai told you previously. So the conclusion, the Japan Compensation System for Cerebral Palsy of quasi-public nature was launched in January 2009. It is a breakthrough system, as it is the first compensation system on no-fault basis in healthcare in Japan. More than 1,000 investigational reports and 6 annual reports on prevention have been crafted so far. Lawsuit cases of OBGY has been on declining trend since the launch. The expansion of the system is very difficult. May be beneficial, however, there are apparently a lot of challenges, such as finance. Yes, that's all I have today. Thank you very much. Thank you.